Hello, everyone. I'm your host, Nick Watts, and welcome to another episode of College Football Under Review, a show made by a football fan for football fans everywhere. And welcome to our Week 4 preview episode. Now, this Week 4 is very interesting, in my opinion, for a couple of reasons. Now, one is once this week is complete, we have passed what our show likes to call the fog of war portion of the football season. Two, there are two different types of teams in our top games of the weeks. And one team is, programs that need a great win to get them back on track, or teams who need a great win to propel their season ceiling. Now, the difference between the two is one is already having a great season. They've had a good couple of last years, but a win here would really increase their ceiling and potential for the season going forward. And those that are trying to get them back on track is, in recent years, it feels like this is the game that's kind of out of their reach that really has set their ceiling back, that with a win this weekend will really help them. And then three, there are just some awesome quarterback battles that could really affect the Heisman Trophy hierarchy for some in the world of college football. Now, with all that said, let's take college football under review. Now, our top matchups include this first one at 11 a.m., number 17, Texas Tech at number 16, Utah. Now, Texas Tech comes into this game with their offense ranked as the second best overall in offensive yardage production and passing yards per game, and is first in points per game in the country. Now, Utah is the complete opposite, and in the film world, we call this the foil. The foil program is Utah, with the defense only allowing an average of 8.3 points per game, which is by far a much different opponent this Texas Tech offense has really faced this season. Yes, the Texas Tech has like a great offense with an average of 384 pass yards and 219 rush yards. But the Utah defense, I feel, is set up to completely negate at least their pass attack. Both of these teams, though, have really yet to actually face any tough opponents on their schedule. And I think this game could really propel the other to succeed this season, especially in the Big 12, as Texas Tech has poured millions of dollars into the roster, and Utah is finally free of the Cam Rising cage. And the question that kind of comes up is, does Kyle Whittingham still have it as one of the longest tenured head coaches as of now within college football? Now, going back to this, I think the Big 12, what we have seen from at least weeks 1 through 3, and what I expect happen again in week 4, is what we will discern after this fog of war, is that the Big 12 is just the same as any other year. It is a crapshoot, Wild West shootout, whatever analogy, metaphor, simile you want to give it, it looks like it's going to happen again. And that's how I felt picking who was going to win this game. I've looked into this game, and every day I've woken up choosing a different team, going over my notes, but I'm going to do it again, and I always do this. I just have this gut feeling that Kyle Whittingham is going to be a great coach, and he's going to have the ability to continue his legacy in a positive trend within the Utah program and get a big win in what should be a great game, especially in the Big 12. But I think that this Utah team, there's something special about them this year. After last season, they did not do well at all, but there's something about them that is different. Now, yes, Texas Tech has a very high-powered offense, and in the model, they are almost even. But Utah just has the better defense. I think they're going to stun Texas Tech in the first half, and they're going to be able to keep putting it on them the rest of the game. Now, our next game is at 2:30 p.m. Number 22, Auburn, is going to be at number 11, Oklahoma. This is one of these quarterback matchups that we said were going to be interesting this week, as it's Arnold versus Mateer. It feels that this game could really officially get either one of these coaches, being Hugh Freeze or Brent Venables, officially off the hot seat for a while this season, and maybe the rest of the season, because these programs haven't really had the best stability within the last couple of years. Oklahoma, a lot better. Obviously, we know that because it's Oklahoma. And in the Big 12, they did have a 10-win season. But when they came to the SEC last season, it was like, whoa, what is going on with Oklahoma? And Auburn hasn't had a double-digit winning season since 2017. So these are both programs starved to get back on track, both programs that want these head coaches to be the right fit, because it seems like both of them are trying their darndest to hope that these coaches fit. Now, flashback to last year, Auburn 100% should have won this game last season after they were up going into the fourth quarter, but both of these teams are coming in a different season, and both of these teams have improved almost leaps and bounds equally. Now, this Oklahoma team, though, I feel is on a completely different caliber compared to their game against Auburn last season with who they have on the team. And Auburn, yes, they're a different caliber in the fact that I don't think they suck. Now, Brent Venables, since heading up this defense for the season and becoming the head play caller, this defense has really shown up and has been showing out, and is the fourth best team in the nation in allowing opposing offensive touchdowns. But when we take a step back and compare both the offenses, I think Mateer is the better quarterback, though Jeremiah Cobb for Auburn looks like he's a dominant rusher this season with already over 300 yards on the season and 4 touchdowns. Yet one thing that was really touted and analysts really talked about a lot was the Auburn wide receiver core. But I think the Oklahoma wide receiver core is outperforming the Tigers' pass, and they're outperforming them by over 140 average passing yards per game. That's a stat you got to look at. Now, Auburn's offense, to put it bluntly, it's not performing to the offensive standards we had for them in the preseason, with many analysts touting their wide receiver roster as a top 5 in the SEC. And what we have seen from Hugh Freeze in the past shows us that this team needs to be explosive. And where has that been? Because we have not seen it. We haven't seen that explosive offense. We haven't seen the drastic jump in numbers. And I think it needs to be shown in this game if Auburn even wants to have a chance. Now, when it comes to the game and getting in the game, both teams, I feel like, need to establish a rush effectively with their running backs. They don't need a running attack with their quarterbacks. They need it with their running backs. That's the key here. Both teams are able to effectively run with the quarterback, but I feel like John Mateer is way more aware in protecting his body than Jackson Arnold is, and I think that could really limit Arnold's conditioning when we get to the fourth quarter if he takes some of the hits that he did, like in the Baylor game week 1, because some of those were some nasty hits. But for the game overall, I feel as if the Auburn faithful are once again going to be disappointed in this game, as I think the Sooners are not going to only outperform them in offense, but I think the defense will be able to step up when needed to clinch and clutch up the game for the Sooners at the end. Give me Oklahoma Sooners. I think that this is going to be a completely different season outlook if they win this game for this program, and it's a very positive and much-needed win that Brent Venables is going to get. And then that takes us to 6 p.m., South Carolina at number 23, Missouri. This Missouri team should, and I believe will, kill the Gamecocks' chances of making the SEC title and the playoffs after this game. The Kansas win was a great game, but this Missouri team lost to 3 SEC opponents last season for their only 3 wins that they have on the season this year. Most of them have come down to, weak defensive performances. But Lenore Sellers being injured doesn't help South Carolina with anything because their backup quarterback against Vanderbilt looked very timid, and their defense against an SEC opponent did not show up. This Missouri offense, though, is just firing on all cylinders, humming, and has showed us even that going down early to what I think should be, when we look at the season as a whole and at the end, we'll say, wow, that was a good Kansas team that Missouri beat. I think Kansas will kind of make a push late in the season for the Big 12 title race, but I still think that Missouri showed in that game that they can win games with an offense in the SEC. And speaking of their offense, Bo Pribula is a better quarterback than Diego Pavia, in my opinion, even though I said all of Diego's praises in our last recap episode. I think Diego Pavia is so much better, who should carve up the Carolina defense. And when we're looking at, something tragic like this happening, like Lenore Sellers going out, getting a serious injury in the last game, we saw Shane Beamer kind of wear his emotion on his chest like he has been known to do. And when he does that in football games, it generally doesn't bode well for the team, and they usually lose. I foresee Shane Beamer wearing his emotions once again on his chest in this game, which will affect his team negatively if something just simple happens in the first half. Something simple happens, like a missed call on the officials or anything like that. He's going to get livid. His team's going to see it. They're going to react to it. They're going to get affected by it. And I think the frustrations may get to him, especially with this backup quarterback. So I've got Missouri winning and gaining some backdoor playoff conversations after a win against South Carolina. Now, our game of the week. I'm excited about this one. And something that I should say about this, I'll save until I give you the time and the teams. But 6:30 p.m., number 9, Illinois, at number 19, Indiana. Altmaier versus Mendoza. I don't know what accent that was, but we're just going to roll with it. Now, I think with the expansion of the playoff, these are the early season games and some of the big games that really wouldn't have been on a lot of people's radar, but is now. With the playoffs and the 12 teams, these games may not jump off the page, but this really is a huge game for the pecking order of the Big Ten when we look at this. And this is why we have it as our game of the week. Illinois came up short last season. They were pretty good, but they weren't in the playoff discussion. Indiana, pretty easy schedule last season. They made it in the playoffs, and everyone said you made it because you had an easy schedule. Well, Indiana, well, Illinois, this is your chance to make some noise. Illinois, they can quiet this and say, look, we're doing a lot better this season. We're making strides to be better. We are going to make sure that we're in the conversation for the playoffs. In Indiana, if they can defend their home in Bloomington, Indiana, then they can say, look what we did. We beat a top 10 opponent. This is our schedule. It's a tougher one this season, but we're still winning. And that's really what this game is coming down to. Now, Mendoza has almost like Tennessee getting Aguilar. Mendoza has transitioned perfectly to this Indiana offense and has been extremely effective. But it's Indiana, and the same accusations that they had last season are still nipping at them right now. Why do I say that? Because they've had a cupcake 1 through 3 week schedule, and he has not faced a strong opposing defensive line, which Illinois has. Altmaier and Mendoza are almost identical on stats, with both having over 700 yards, and Altmaier with 8 touchdowns and Mendoza 9 touchdowns. So this is a very evenly matched game, I feel. But what's crazy is that the computers over at ESPN and the simulations are actually giving Indiana the edge and the win pretty confidently. But they didn't account for the under review simulation. What's that simulation? It's a combination between my brain and my gut. And I've been riding high on the Illini all season. I think that Illinois will win this game because they have shown us that they can go into an away environment and utilize this veteran roster to complement each side of the ball, with the offense looking great on third downs, consistent and strong with Luke Altmaier as the quarterback, and the defense is able to create turnovers and stops with the defensive line when it comes to crucial plays. And because of that, give me Illinois winning this game. Now, here are some of our other notable games coming into the week. 11 a.m., SMU at TCU. This is what we like to call the battle for the Iron Skillet. This is one of the many reasons that I think everyone should love college football. It's so much different and iconic than the NFL, NBA, any pro or other college, sport. Even though basketball, iconic, March Madness, and the College Baseball World Series, there's just something special about college football. Now, the battle for the Iron Skillet, if you don't know what that is, has been a rivalry game between these two programs since 1915. And you may say, well, why the heck is, it an iron skillet? Well, it is said to believe that SMU had brought out an iron skillet to mock TCU that, they were cooking some frog legs up. And last year, they did cook some frog legs. But what's sad to hear, and what is sad that we are starting to see in the world of college football as it's slowly changing, and some say evolving, but how can you evolve when you look worse? Because when I say this, right now, these two programs don't have another scheduled matchup between each other in the future. This is sad. This is a long-standing rivalry that has fueled just these fan bases. I was going to say Texas, but there's a lot bigger games. But this is still just something that needs to stay. And if you may say, oh, well, this is just a small little, rivalry game. It's whatever. It's not going to bleed into some of the more blue blood rivalries. Oh, yeah. This is the same problem with Notre Dame and USC. USC seemingly doesn't want to play again and has no more future scheduled games in their rivalry. So we need to really advocate for these programs and these teams to keep their rivalry games, because it's what separates college football from the rest of the world, and that's why it makes it so special. That's why it's so special to me, and that's why we got to keep it. Got to put on some chapstick. Now, the quarterback battle in this, one of the other ones that I told you, it's Hoover and Jennings facing off, with both able to kind of throw up big and gaudy numbers as quarterbacks. But I think Hoover slightly gets the edge in this because I think he's a little bit more disciplined when it comes to turnovers than Jennings. And Jennings, I feel like he just relies on his legs a little too much to get him out of danger when there wasn't even danger to begin with, and he should have just stepped up and thrown the ball in the pocket. Though I think both of these offenses are going to be toe-to-toe and really the showcase of this game, as, it's TCU and it's SMU. These quarterbacks actually, I believe, threw for over 9,000 yards combined last season. So yeah, it's going to be an offensive showdown. Now, this will be, in my opinion, though, the arrival of the TCU team in the Big 12 title game kind of conversations, because at the beginning of the season, I believe we had them as a dark horse or the wild card going into the season for the Big 12 conference. And it's this feeling I had about SMU when they lost to Clemson in the ACC championship game. I think they're a little bit fraudulent. I don't think they're there. I don't think they're a complete team yet. Rhett Lashley has something going for him, but it's just not there yet. And it's got to get there before they're going to do that. And I think TCU is going to make strides in the Big 12, and this is going to be the win that sets it all apart for them. So give me TCU winning as of now, the last matchup in the battle for the Iron Skillet. Now, 2:30 p.m., we've got Tulane at number 13, Ole Miss. Now, there's something weird about this game. I'll get back to that in a second. But Ole Miss has shown us that they can, win complete games against unranked teams, and that's what they've played. They've played unranked teams, and they play an unranked Tulane. Yet they haven't done anything to really wow me, and that's why it's an interesting game. Jake Retzlaff has made a great transition from BYU to Tulane, and I think he fits the program better there as a player, and as well as his swagger is pretty infectious, and you can see it within this Tulane squad. But on the other side, this Ole Miss team under Austin Simmons hasn't looked consistent, and Lane has, I feel like, had to coach and call a masterclass of offensive plays when it's on crucial downs to win this game. I don't know. I don't know what it is about this game, and I simply will just say this for my reasoning on who I have to win this game. This Ole Miss team is better than Tulane, but it's always around this time of year when Lane just finds a way to lose a game atrociously, and he just shouldn't. And I think it's going to be this game. So I've got Tulane. This is a long shot for me, but I just feel like this Tulane team is going to come in and shock Ole Miss. Kentucky did it last year by this time next week. So I think it's coming a week early, and Ole Miss is just going to lose this game. They shouldn't. But I think at the end of the season, we'll say that Tulane team, they ended out pretty good. And then we go to 6:30 p.m., Florida at number 4, Miami. Lagway versus Beck. Now, Miami can continue to add to their resume if they can win in a confident fashion against this Florida team like they did last season. And if Carson Beck puts up big numbers, then he just might start being in the Heisman conversation and help Mario Cristobal give this Miami program a real stigma actually now, and it's sticking, that Mario Cristobal in Miami can create and develop high-level quarterbacks, which should help them in the recruiting trail in the future. And you may laugh at me and say, "Oh, it would look good. They're playing Florida. Come on." Well, yes, as atrocious as Florida has looked and played and lost, you got to look at their defense. Their defense has only allowed 2 touchdowns this season and allowed an average of 8 points a game on defense. It's pretty insane. It's pretty insane. Scratch that. That's a wrong stat. 18. Forgot a 1. But I think it would be absolutely hilarious if Billy Napier somehow came out of this game with a win just to keep his job hopes alive, forcing the Florida fans to deal with him and ride the gauntlet of a schedule even more. Because it feels like this Florida team has, and the program in general, has become like the new Auburn football program when it comes to being indecisive on keeping their head coach or not. But look on the bright side. Napier just will have to win around 20 straight more games to get around back on track with Dan Mullen at Florida and the record that he left with when he was fired. So have fun, Florida fans. It's not looking good. DJ Lagway, though, also, we have to acknowledge that he looked terrible against LSU with 5 interceptions, and I don't think he's going to bode any better against the Miami defense, who ain't no slouch either. So don't expect that stat to change positively in this game. And for our pick, it doesn't seem like there's really any positives that we have put to Florida, and you're probably thinking we're not picking Florida. But you would be absolutely correct. This Miami team with Carson Beck should be weary not to take this Florida team in the first half lightly, though. But after the way that they handled USF, I don't think this would, be too much of a shock if they win in similar fashion for the Hurricanes against Florida. And I'm taking the Canes again. And then 6:30 p.m., Arizona State at Baylor. Baylor's run defense is terrible. ASU's pass offense has been terrible, but ASU's run offense has been great and almost beat Mississippi State with continuous run plays down the field without even thinking about passing it. And Arizona State is sitting inside the top 30 in the nation in rushing success rate, which spells disaster for a Baylor run defense that is already on its heels every game. Though the pass offense for Arizona State. Sam Leavitt looked phenomenal last season, but right now he has been nothing close to his preseason hype, even with some great offensive weapons around him in All-American Jordan Tyson, though he already has 24 receptions and 4 touchdowns this season, so that's pretty good to look at. But this game is one kind of like the TCU and SMU game. Both of these offenses will be able to move the ball regardless, but whoever wins this turnover battle will win. And you may say, well, duh, that's how football works. Well, when you have this type of offensive chaos, yeah, the turnovers are going to mean that much more. Now, the only way that ASU can combat losing the turnover battle, in my opinion, is if they can put up around 250 yards against the Baylor defense. Now, we have ASU winning the Big 12 conference again. I think Kenny Dillingham is a great coach. He commands his players really well, and I think that he's going to prepare them for this game accurately, and I think this is where Sam Leavitt finally shows up for the season, and the run defense for Baylor won't be able to stop this effective Sun Devil rush that has shown that they can kill the clock and drive the field as a last resort that could be used for a win against Baylor. So give me Arizona State Sun Devils. Now, this is our last game, and I know there's probably going to be a little questionable thought process on my account on what about Nebraska-Michigan? Why did you not put that game up here? Why do you have Michigan State and number 25 USC as your last notable game at 10 p.m.? Well, I'll tell you this. I don't think that Michigan-Nebraska game is going to be as good as this game or has as much on the line for the future of either of those programs this season, because I don't think that they're contenders. I don't think they're contenders at all. But one team that is starting to rise above the rest that some people thought looked like they could be dead is none other than number 25 USC. And a shocker, I kind of feel like a little bit, is Michigan State. Now, USC should win this game because they have the talent, they have the home field advantage, and they have the Pacific time zone. Did he just say Pacific time zone? Yes, I did. And you may say, why do you have the Pacific time zone as a favorable thing? Well, this Michigan State team has to travel 3 hours back. And who knows? Players could get jet lag, but it showed up a lot in the Big Ten whenever they had to travel over, and vice versa whenever the West Coast teams had to travel over there. But since joining the Big Ten, the only loss that USC has had to a Big Ten opponent at home during conference play is Penn State last season. That's pretty good. And USC's quarterback and running back dominance should allow this balanced attack to open up multiple looks against this Michigan State roster. Now, I love Michigan State. They're showing up great. They're doing a lot better than I thought they would be at this point. But this Michigan State team, yes, they've improved, and the veterans on their roster have developed well over the offseason. Yet, I think that the recruiting prowess, the depth that Lincoln Riley has at USC should give the edge in the matchup. And that's just too many things in favor of the Trojans. So I got to put the Trojans above Michigan State. And you may say, well, I'm still sitting here questioning that you just said that, oh, well, this is going to be a better game than Michigan and Nebraska. And you're sitting there thinking, well, he's still stupid. Well, I may be a little stupid, but I'm not stupid, because USC, if they win this game, they will most likely go up or stay in the absolutely preposterous poll, also known as the AP poll. And they need to keep this going, because that will be the only possibly ranked team that Notre Dame will have to play. And it'd be wild if USC was able to win that game. But that's why we're keeping a close eye on this USC team. And that wraps up kind of our notable games this week of who we picked, who we're going over, who we're just taking. And now we get into kind of the weekly news that we have seen throughout the week. And there's a little bit that we kind of gotta go over after a sip of water. So, if you don't remember last recap episode of week 3, or you didn't see it on Instagram, which you should follow, it was the ugly went to Brian Kelly for his lash out at his post-game press conference. Well, Brian Kelly issued an apology after the press conference on their weekly press conference going into the week of practice against Southeastern Louisiana. And this is what he said. I think it's important to understand, my standards relative to how we work with the media on a day-to-day basis need to be higher. I take responsibility for that, and I'll be better in the future. I publicly apologize to Mike, and he's an outstanding reporter. He works hard and will do better moving forward. From Brian Kelly. Now, I'm going to give Brian Kelly his flowers. I'm glad you were the bigger man, came and apologized, because I think you don't want to mess with the media. And I think it just gave you a bad look. But overall, I'm glad you said the apology. We like it, but we're still going to keep you at ugly, because it was still pretty ugly from last week. Okay. It's already code red for some of these programs. And if you are, some of the other programs in the world, like maybe you're Tennessee, you just lost a heartbreaker. Maybe you're Alabama, you're still getting all the tomahawk chops from all the FSU fans. Well, at least you're not UCLA or Virginia Tech, after they have both fired their head coaches after week 3. So UCLA fired football coach Deshaun Foster on Sunday after a winless start to the season, and Tim Skipper Previously, the special assistant to Foster will now serve as the Bruins' interim head coach for the rest of the season, the school has claimed. And then the Virginia Tech team has fired Coach Brent Pry on Sunday after another 0-3 start to the season. So if you're out there, you're feeling sad about your team, you're feeling down in the dumps, just remember, you're not UCLA or Virginia Tech. So keep your head high. Keep them high. Outside of programs being down bad and their coaches getting fired, the NCAA has they've finally done something. They finally dumped something and moved to a single transfer portal window for the future. Now, what does this mean? I'll tell you in a second. But the Division I Administrative Committee voted to approve a legislative change that eliminates the spring transfer window, but they did not sign off on establishing a date yet or the parameters of this and has not set the official dates. Now, players on teams still competing in the college football playoff in January would have 5 days after their final postseason game to enter the portal. Hearing this makes me happy because it's almost like I'm happy, but at the same time like a delusional happy. Like I'm happy that this happened, but like how long did this actually have to take to happen? Because this is kind of ludicrous. Everyone saw that you allowing a spring transfer was just going to create chaos, and that's what it's done. But I'm glad they're doing this. One thing I want to make sure that we have, though, is the ability, for these players to have this waiver for the playoff. And when the playoff is going on or sometime, when all the players go and it's just the semifinal and the national championship, there should be a little bit like of a dead period. You can't contact in-person recruits. You can email, text, do whatever. But I don't think there should be any in-person stuff allowed because it's not fair to the teams competing in the national championship. So that's all I have to say about that. We'll be keeping a close eye on it and almost keep it under review. And then another piece of business that I thought was interesting was Dabo Swinney. Just like Brian Kelly, he had a press conference highlight, but for another reason. So after going 1-2 so far in the season, the fan base and media of the sport, like they always do, are starting to question Dabo Swinney. And Dabo honestly calls their bluff, saying that he's only 55 and he will still be coaching even if it's not here. He's not going to the beach if he gets fired from here. He's going to a different school and he is going to do his own thing. And he said, you're going to have to deal with me for a while. And this could be the beginning of just an ugly divorce. It could, but it also gives me the sense that Dabo's like the victim of his own success. And we could really start seeing the beginning of a villain arc as the only reason these fans care about this program and care about football at Clemson is because of Dabo. He's made them care after going to the playoffs 7 out of the last 10 years, and 8 out of the last 10 years they have won the ACC. That's a pretty darn good stat in his favor that he did use in his press conference. Though outside of the press conference, I think we really have to think about this discussion. If he wants to come out here and say and speculate, yeah, fire me. I'll go somewhere else. I'll get hired, because I'm willing to bet, yes, he will get hired. Though if he wants to find success somewhere else, he needs to find a program that has a strong GM for the football, for the football program to help him and force him to utilize the transfer in NIL if he did leave Clemson. And you may say, what are some of these programs who have, possible coach availability that could kind of fit this? And this is, we're just going to speculate. We're just going to put thoughts into people's heads. If Clemson and Dabo kind of had this falling out love for each other, and they said, "It's Dabo, you've given us everything. You've given us everything, but the love's just not there anymore. These are some of the programs that I'm going to give you 3 right here. Programs that I think Dabo Swinney could go and coach for and find success in if he had to leave Clemson. 1, that's Florida. I think Florida is looking for someone like this, yet he would fit there only because he would have all the keys to success in the brand to recruit high talent players and get players in the transfer portal. Because who doesn't want to go to college in Florida? 2, Oklahoma State. You're saying, what? Oklahoma State? I'm saying, yes. Oklahoma State is honestly probably also done with their coach, Mike Gundy. And so they need someone to revitalize. They need a fresh face. They need Dabo Swinney. Though Mike Gundy hasn't been able to get the NIL done. So I think that they need to hire someone to complement Dabo Swinney if he went there. But this third team that I think could actually be a good fit for Dabo Swinney. And if Dabo Swinney ever had to leave Clemson and they fired him, I think somewhere that he could go, that he could make shockwaves in the college football world, Stanford. I think that him going there, combining with Andrew Luck as the GM, would be deadly. You would have Dabo, the coaching and developing mind, and you would have Andrew Luck, the GM face of the program when it came to recruiting look. And I think that would be a great marriage and fit together. So I think if Dabo Swinney ever left Clemson, Stanford would be an awesome place for him to go. And now we get to my AP poll reaction, the absolutely preposterous poll. And it's always like the top 10 and top 5 that really are griping me right now because we've still got a lot of the season shake up. But I'm just going to say it here. Penn State doesn't deserve to be ranked 2 with who they have played and the teams behind them who have played a much tougher and harder schedule. Yeah, Penn State's been looking good, but I'm tired of acknowledging that they are worthy of the second spot until they actually prove it against a good team. Like I said, they've got the 51st rank in the strength of schedule. It's a cupcake, and they're going to walk into the playoff this year. And then the next one, Miami. I think Miami should take Penn State's spot. They should be 2, as they're the only team in this top 25 who has 2 wins against previously ranked AP top 25 teams and has a defense almost as good as LSU, but the offense is far superior. Now, obviously, the biggest gripe I think everyone has, and this is why it's the absolutely preposterous bowl, Notre Dame needs to get the heck out of this top 25. This is the best example of why we call it the absolutely preposterous poll, because this is disgusting, and it's the only reason that this team is in the top 25 with 2 losses is 2 reasons. And that's the 2 words, Notre Dame. Why don't you go out and prove something before you get wrecked? So get the heck out of this poll. And then this is our closing category of the week, as we do for our preview episode. Who is in the Heisman hype seat? I was thinking, kind of Diego Pavia, but he hasn't thrown up the numbers yet quite well. I'm thinking Carson Beck. He's doing well, though. I think he needs to do really. I think if he does great this week, he's gonna propel himself a lot. But I think we just have to go with John Mateer, still in the Heisman hype seat going into this week of college football. Now, this is the last week of, like we said, what we call the fog of war, and because of that, we will give our show's updated top 25. And we will look at our preseason rankings and reflect on that, as well as look at some narratives and driving factors for certain programs and conferences moving forward into our next episode. This can be narratives that include, the Heisman race. This can be conference championships. This can be teams that have fallen off who have risen up. And then this will all be on our week 4 recap, which will come out on Sunday as usual. With that being said, I'm Nick Watts. Thank all of you for tuning in to this episode. And we'll see you next time when we take more college football under review.